Hey, you geeks! I'm really not sure I'm ever going to get used to Sanderson's characters actually talking to each other. Like, it's a hallmark of epic fantasy and tragedy that characters don't talk to each other. Because of my unwavering conviction that Wind and Truth is both fantasy and tragedy, I have a massive blind spot for predicting if two groups of characters are actually going to team up before the finale, even if it's on the back cover of the Storming book. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so strap in as I unwrap all of my theories and reactions from Wind and Truth chapters 29 and 30. Full spoilers ahead. Loose ends. Oh my gosh, Shallan is only on day 2 demonstrating self-assessment and competence as she analyzes what went wrong in her infiltration of the Ghostbloods. Since Yatil and Mraize got away, she's clearly viewing this as mostly a failure, but since I predicted it would go far worse, I'm okay with this outcome. Her self-knowledge and willingness to share with the rest of the class means that we're finally getting insight into what normal Lightweavers can and cannot do. She almost tried pulling herself all the way into Shadesmar, something she wasn't supposed to be able to do with her powers, but which she'd done before, regardless. 2 bonds, 2 spren, storms. That explains some curious events in her past. Instead of her pulling them into her realm, they pulled her somewhat into theirs. So does this explain Shallan's shenanigans in The Way of Kings when she yeeted herself physically into Shadesmar before she bonded her second pattern?
No. Sorry, Bear.
Either Sanderson is retconning some of Shallan's powers like he did totally with Lift's red chicken, or he is indicating there is something deeper at play here. Something that maybe even Shallan doesn't know, like that her mother's a herald. Also, I find it curious that when Shallan looks into Shadesmar, she only sees 3 humans and some Mandras. Don't Sajinat's spren generally like to stay close to their radiance, like within them? Though also, how that would manifest in Shadesmar is... I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. For now, we can stop worrying about Shallan acting as a rogue agent alone, and instead start worrying about other people acting as rogue agents alone. I seem to have been ahead of the curve when assigning an expletive to describe poor Gav's storyline. Sanderson here seems to agree with me, starting off with Lift teaching little Gav how to swear. That is hilarious and cute, but it ain't cute how Lift gives him some, sage life advice without, helpful parameters. This world, she said, is full of stuff that people think you ain't supposed to do, but which is actually okay. It's also full of stuff you really, really shouldn't do. No one tells you which is which, so you gotta find the difference. And then she proceeds to encourage little Gav on his quest of vengeance against Vyre and anyone else who hurt his father. Like, threw him into a desk and beat the living snot out of him to teach him a lesson? I'm not sure little Gav knows about Dalinar's antics yet, but perhaps Odium could give him a little history lesson, although it's not his strong suit. Not to mention I have grave concerns about the shape of Lift and Gav's secret handshake. She put out her hand, 2 fingers, out and crooked, like a claw. He regarded it, then opened his eyes wide in shock. Trembling, he formed a hand from Vines and met hers. I get the secret handshake, he whispered. I find it very disturbing that Sanderson hid the description of what the two fingers actually look like when he first describes the shake between Gab and Lift. It's not until Lift gives the handshake to Wendell that he mentions the fingers are crooked. Now, Lift calls this a claw, but I call it a hook.
Thank you.
And since we operate on Peter Pan logic here, I am very disturbed by this. Not to mention the cherry on top that is Noadon's epigraph in the following chapter. As I fear not the child with a weapon he cannot lift, I will never fear the mind of a man who does not think. You know, Dalinar once said that very quote in Words of Radiance, chapter 67. I looked it up. Back when Dalinar was very self-confident and used a Noadon quote for every situation, like any good fan of The Way of Kings. Now I feel like Noadon's first epigraph is both mocking Dalinar and us for our, blind enthusiasm. Those who offer blanket condemnation are fools, for each situation deserves its own consideration, and rarely can you simply apply a saying, even one of mine, to a situation without serious weighing of the context. Is Dalinar's next ideal to learn that he is in fact a fool in this regard as well? Lift already is aware of Dalinar's foolishness. You gotta be careful with Dalinar. He's real old, like old as mountains and stuff. But somehow he doesn't know that there's things a person should do that everyone says ain't right, you know? Though when it comes to the question of should we or should we not sacrifice a child to save the world, the death rattle implies that everyone who draws breath wishes Dalinar to do it. So is this where Dalinar decides that the right thing is not what everyone says it is?
But you know, even a good decision, if made for the wrong reasons, can be a wrong decision.
I'm also gravely concerned that Lift just volunteered to hold Dalinar while Gav stabs him in the Duel of the Champions. Let me know your thoughts and interpretations down below. Sneaky. As the chapter ends, Lift decides that she's gonna follow Dalinar and Navani in the physical realm for now. I'm feeling kinda grown up today, Lift said, on account of my good manners and full stomach. Wendell nodded, satisfied. He glanced at her, then frowned. You're going to follow them, aren't you? Storming right I am, Lift said, hopping down. I mean, I need more snacks, so I was planning to get up anyway. Since Lift is so determined to go where she is not supposed to go, it reminded me that she's already demonstrated the ability to navigate the spiritual realm as far back as Oathbringer. I didn't expect you to be so old, the girl said. She sat perched cross-legged on a large boulder nearby. This is not possible, the Stormfather said in Dalinar's mind. How did she come here? You didn't bring her in? Dalinar said softly. No, this is not possible. How? Since Lift has demonstrated an uncanny ability to do exactly what the Stormfather deems impossible, it seems like she will have massive implications for Dalinar's plot to discover honor in the spiritual realm, which the Stormfather also deems impossible. So I think she might just stow away and eat their sandwiches and stuff and maybe save the world, if she doesn't have to help kill Dalinar afterward. The boys are back! Renarin and Relaine have finally entered the plot, with a new chapter icon that is vaguely reminiscent of my favorite fan art of the duo. All good things around here. I also don't really have a horse in the race of the Renarin and Relaine ship, but I do appreciate that Sanderson is being respectful and slowly taking Renarin and the reader into this, especially a reader like me who isn't really used to reading queer relationships in text, so it's kind of hard to pick up the subtext unless someone spells it out for me. Thank you, Sanderson. And Draheat. Despite Renarin's insistence that he's not like other boys, he is still like every other stereotypical fantasy protagonist who does not want to be informed of what's going on and is rebelling against future important titles looming in his potential future. Of course she'd send him a report. She still hoped, as Dalinar did, that Renarin would change his mind and agree to be king of Urithiru should his father fall. Barring that, they wanted him to be Jasnah's heir until Gav was of age. "You will need this information," Gliss said in his mind. "You will pay attention." I'm with Gliss on this one. Renarin should not take for granted that Navani would deign to send him a report of her super secret schemes. Not only is he socially awkward, which as a fantasy protagonist means he is doomed to be important in the future, and he's been voted by me number 1 Colin most likely to survive to the back 5, he already knows in-world that his power protects those around him because it makes them invisible to Odium's future sight, of sorts. I'm glad that Shallan can see Renarin's potential, even when the guy who can foresee the future cannot. And to boot, Rlain has joined the party, demonstrating in his first scene more street smarts than the creator gave Egwene by putting together what he saw in the vision with what he actually knows of reality. Mishram. Yes, Rlain did know that name. She had ruled the Singers long ago, a Spren who had wanted to perpetuate the fighting after the Fused left. The one who had been determined to exterminate humankind, escalating the war. She was the reason Rlain's people had abandoned their forms and left. She was the queen of the gods they had forsaken, and he suspected he'd just seen her face in the vision. Not to mention giving us that juicy tidbit that Mishram escalated the war. He also identifies her as the queen of their gods, the gods who did not shatter the Shattered Plains. Now, my basic theory is that Honor did that because they broke their oaths and were an unfaithful people. Now, I've double-checked the Coppermine's math and textual reconstruction to confirm that the listeners left the Fused before Ahari Etiab, but possibly after Honor or someone shattered the plains. So what could Ba-Aina Mishram have done that escalated the situation that wasn't the false desolation? Perhaps Dalinar will see on his visions of the past, or Renarin will in his foresight of the future, as those are increasingly overlapping to become the same thing.
You could gaze into the future.
Renarin also brings us that other old standby of fantasy epics, the prophecy of the book, though this vision is a multi-panel event. So let's start with what's behind door number 1. The window depicted Renarin sitting on a throne. He wore some kind of archaic outfit, a little like the fencing attire people wore on the Alethi training grounds, with the skirts. "This is Kholinar," Renarin said, "but it's not the throne room. That looks like my room." Frankly, I'm a little surprised that this window is implying that Renarin's old room in the Kholinar Palace is still standing, since the Fused pretty much renovated the heck out of that place with their own interesting aesthetic, according to Venli. This may be a sign that the past and the future aren't all that different, or perhaps it's a vision of the different future, the path that they will go down if Dalinar kills Gav in the Duel of the Champions, they get Alethkar back, and Jasnah dies without offspring, making Renarin the next king of Alethkar. As for the implication that the Alethi Takama would take inspiration from the Fused flowing fashion sense, well, 'tis the nature of fashion.
It's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you.
On to the next window. A dark building storm. Relay knew that one, the Everstorm, which passed by every 9 days. It was easy to forget about Urithiru, which was usually above both storms. But the others brought reports. Lightning strikes. Thunder. Yeah, I'm not actually certain that this is the Everstorm. Could it possibly be the storm, formerly known as the High Storm, which occurs when the Stormfather goes dead-eye? Otherwise, we know that the High Storm's height has been getting higher and higher. At the end of Rhythm of War, it was almost to the top of the tower, but not quite. So, by the time Dalinar's duel rolls around in 8 days, would it just be peak aesthetic for that high storm to strike at the top of the tower, and for the Everstorm, controlled by Odium, to rise to meet it? Now, I think the sibling would protect those within the tower, but...
Yeah, but it's gonna look really cool.
Third window is a vision of the past and also the future. Again, as Dalinar viewed this vision twice, first cluing him into the cyclical nature of his back-looking visions. The next depicted some kind of clifftop overlook, with Dalinar standing in front of a glowing golden figure. In the distance, a city was collapsing into a spreading pit. Though the image was static, he felt motion to it somehow, as if the city was constantly crumbling into that pit. Renarin and Relane's discussion implies that maybe they don't remember that this was Honor's attempt to look into the future, pitiful as it was. So it makes sense that this vision would actually still have yet to occur. But also, it's already occurred.
But it is over. Unless this is the future.
Rather, I don't think the golden figure is the old Honor of Dalinar's past, but rather the new golden Odium of the future. They might be standing in the spiritual realm, the place where the Stormfather likes to imagine that things go to die by dissolving into the wind. And the city collapsing is really the spiritual representation of a renewed Kholinar disappearing like dust into the wind. I find it strangely easy how all of these visions still work with my new premise that Gavinor is the champion. It seems like Odium has already decided who his champion will be, and all that remains is Dalinar's decision as to what to do with that. And it further remains which of those decisions will cause the Stormfather to go dead-eye and create the Night of Sorrows. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. The final window has, of all things, 12 people. Like, I almost forgot how important of a number that is in this world, but we're not going to get into that. Rather, we'll focus on how it could apply to Roshar, where the 2 shards left standing, Odium at number 9 and Cultivation at number 3, added together make 12. Though all of these people seem to have a special tie to honor, especially the heralds themselves, who seem to be now at peace, Renarin said. I feel peace from this one. Who are they, do you suppose? Humans, Relane said. They're all humans, I think. This one might be a Horn Eater, and this one, Makabaki, and this one, the distant woman in a vivid blue skirt with white hair and blue skin. Horn Eater is generally cultural shorthand for saying a person has red hair, like Shanarach, and Nail is consistently mistaken for Makabaki. Though the blue-skinned woman throws this off because none of the heralds are reported to have blue skin, even accounting for the Aletheization depictions of heralds in recent time. If we go off of stories like Misham, it appears that the blue-skinned of Natan people did not appear until after humans had fully settled Roshar, and therefore would be after the heralds already went to Braze. As of right now, we only have 9 heralds still standing, so it follows that there's going to be extra people there to get to 12. And I think it makes most sense that the blue woman is none other than Syl herself. So one of the extra people there is probably Kaladin, leaving one more. Probably Zeph, based off of what we know so far of Kaladin and Syl's traveling companions, but no bald head is mentioned. Also, this is repeatedly stated to be the far distance and far away. So is this a remote possibility? Or is this the end of Book 10 when Kaladin, acting as Honor, holds the Herald's oaths for Phil?
I hold your oath fulfilled. Go. Be at peace.
It is again quite common in epic fantasies to foretell the very end very early. So it's kind of surprising that Sanderson hasn't done it until now. The pipe was lit in Book 1 of The Wheel of Time, after all. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if